Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Build an Iconic Life. I'm here with Dean Mercado, and you are in for a treat.
I came from the mud. There's dirt on my hands.
Welcome to Build an Iconic Life podcast. I'm your host, Chris Whitehead, and this podcast is dedicated to help you build a life with zero regrets by focusing on how you have everything you need to stand up, stand out, and live life on your terms. Let's dive right in. Dean, thank you, sir.
Oh, thank you. I'm so glad to be here.
You've been at this coaching thing for a minute, huh?
Yeah, and a half.
Well, how'd you get into it?
Well, it's interesting because it didn't start out that way. That wasn't the original intention. I was running my main company called Online Marketing Muscle, and a couple of years deep, what I started to recognize and notice was that a lot of our clients were starting to ask for something more. They needed something deeper. They were sick and tired of paying the huge rates that the digital marketing world was charging back in those days, and they needed to have a better grip on what they were buying. So they were looking for something more. They wanted somebody who could say, hey, not just the gold is over there in the mine over there, but somebody who would actually say, hey, the gold's over there in the mine over here. Take my hand. Come with me. I'll take you right into the gold mine. And then what we'll do when we get in there is I'll show you how to mine that gold. And then once we mine that gold and bring it out and clean it off, I'll show you what to do with it when you get it out of the mine. So people were looking for something more substantial. They were, mind you, my company, Online Marketing Muscle, we were at the beginning of this internet thing. So 2004 was when we were founded. People were like, internet, why would you waste your time building an internet type company, right? So I knew there was more to it than that back then. But long story short, it was being asked of us to get into coaching to help a little bit more. So we started doing it. I started doing that. And then what I found was that it started to become the dominant ask. It was the thing that people were looking for more than ever, especially as they started to find out that I was holding hand and bringing them in, right? And that was a big game changer because there wasn't a lot of that happening on the scene back then. Everybody was very quick to say, hey, you need to do this. You need to. Really? Okay. Well, people are trying it and they're not getting results and they're getting frustrated with that. So out of that came the coaching. And then several years deep into the coaching, we saw the coaching start to dwarf the other company, the Online Marketing Muscle company. So more people were looking for the coaching than they were for the digital marketing services. And what ended up happening was a couple of years back, about 3-4 years now, I decided to split the two companies in half. I split them up and said, you know what? It's time that Dean doesn't get in the way of Online Marketing Muscle doing its thing. And it's time that Online Marketing Muscle didn't get in the way of me personally. I didn't want my agency, so to speak, to be all about me. It was supposed to be bigger than me. It was never supposed to be about just me. So we went with the two companies, and it's been better ever since. Each one has their own identity, but they are very in sync with one another. They both feed each other. So it's like people hire me for coaching, they end up buying digital marketing services. People hire us for digital marketing services, they decide, you know what, we need a coach. So it's been very like that for us here.
You know, I started business back in 1998, and the internet was an up and coming thing.
Yes,
but it wasn't a thing. And you know, we're internet 3.0 at this point. You know, 1.0 was really the Wild West. 2.0 is when everybody figured out that email marketing can actually really make you some money.
Right.
And then social media came about, and everybody started promoting themselves as an expert on the thing that they just paid $10,000 to learn last month.
Right.
And now we're getting into authenticity and vulnerability because people have seen so much shit out there that they really can tell the difference. And I mean, I'm going to be a sentiment to it. You know, one of my businesses is a a remodeling company. And I remember back in 2004, we paid $6,000. We went on to foreclosure.com.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And we were just looking at houses to buy. We were going to start flipping them. It just made sense based upon the market and what everybody was talking about. Well, we paid this $6,000. And basically what it was a guy reading us a book every other week that we could have bought for $50.
Right. Exactly.
But at the time, it made my wife comfortable because, she felt like somebody was holding her hand.
Yes.
But to me, as an entrepreneur, I'm always looking at things like, well, how did we find you? And how did you then find us? And then how did you sell us? And then what are the deliverables? And, I'm a younger business owner, so I'm looking around at what all this stuff actually means and what I can offer. And I found what you found, man. There are many people that will sell things to ignorant people.
Oh, yes.
And they're very happy to lay their heads on the pillow at night, not worrying about the result that shows up from that. And like you, and this is one of the reasons I have you on the show, like you, I'm the kind of guy that wakes up at 2:00 or 3:00 in the morning and goes, oh shit, that whole plan we had to do that thing is not going to work. It's not what they want. I've got to tell all the guys and gals tomorrow that we're switching game plans. I got to let the homeowner know. I got to da-da-da-da-da.
Right.
And just for peace of mind and living a life worth living, I decided I wanted to be different. And I found that to be a hard road too.
Sure.
And when I switched on to online, because I own multiple companies just like you do, when I switched to online coaching, I was one of those people that was really trying to get my feet under me. And I was a little bit of the wrong side, not knowing that I was part of the wrong side.
Right.
And then over time, that same feeling started to hit like, man, if these people want to pay me money, I'm used to being in business where people will pay me something and I give them a tangible thing. Like they can walk on the deck. They can walk into the bathroom on the second floor that we just built, blah, blah, blah. And I became really unsettled with it to offer something and leave the variable, which is the easiest one. Oh, that's operator error. That has nothing to do with me. And so I went from being a coach to being a mentor.
Right.
And I have a very strong suspicion that you're not nearly as much of a coach as you are someone that knows just by listening to somebody, you go, all right, what is it that you want to accomplish?
Right.
And you go, oh, well, we got 14 paths to get there. It depends on how quick, how much money you want to spend, and what it is you want this thing to look like at the end. And I want to ask you this.
Sure. Shoot.
What is it that has made you different? And this is not a promo ad, everybody. This is truly talking to a veteran in business who's helped quite a few people. Some of them are some of my best friends on earth. But what is the difference to you between a coach and a mentor?
That's a great question. And I think depending on who you ask, you may get a million different answers to that. I do think that coaches have been pigeonholed to be a certain way where they are somebody who just kind of stands on the sideline and says, hey, do this, just turn this a little bit, or maybe, kind of like how we do in sports when we look at sports. Hey, maybe you want to just hang in there a little bit more and keep your eye on the ball, that kind of thing, rah, rah, rah from the outside. That's kind of been a lot of what we see from coaches these days. People go through these coaching certification programs, and that's a lot of what they teach. Ask a question, step out of the way. Ask a question, step out of the way. That's all good and fun. But I always found that it's typically not enough for most. And that's where the mentorship does come in. I think that it does make a difference when somebody's been there and does that. I think it does make a difference when people have that sight and those ears because they've been there, done that, because they've seen it, whether it's through their own initiatives or through if they had the luck and the fortunate ability to be able to work with clients. Sometimes we work with clients that are above our pay grade, and that's okay too, because even as a coach or a mentor, we have trained ears, trained eyes. That's what I would say. It doesn't make me a better business person than the next person or the person I'm working with. It just means that they've brought me in because my trained eyes and ears are able to help them get through a specific situation. So the lines are blurred, long story short, between mentor and coach. I think you'll find that my brand and my way of going is kind of a blend between the two. I do think that it really all does start with great questions, Because when you get some mentors who step in and say, this is how it has to be, and this is the only way. No, it's not. I've worked with thousands of entrepreneurs. I've seen 1,000 different solutions. It depends on you. It depends on everything else going on. So there's so many factors that we as a coach or as a mentor have to factor in order for you to accomplish what's right for you. In Online Marketing Muscle, we've dubbed it your unique marketing recipe because we do mostly in the marketing side of things. I firmly believe everybody has a unique marketing recipe, especially when we step into this authenticity, as you pointed it out, this iconic stage of the world that we're stepping into now. If you're not focusing in and honing in on your personal brand right now and on the overall branding of things, you're missing out. Even 15, 20 years ago when I was doing SEO work for clients and coaching them too at the same time, because remember, it was both in one company at that time. We learned that way back then, that the companies that had the stronger brands in the eyes of the Googles of the world are the ones that rose to the top of the search results. Even if they put out crap, garbage content, they still rose to the top because they were a known brand. There was value attached to what that person or that company was bringing. So blurring the lines between coaches and mentors, that have probably blurred it a little bit more there. But
do you think that the more things change, the more they stay the same? And also,
yes.
Do you think that there's a certain specific gravity required before an entrepreneur understands the power of branding? Because I know I've had lots of conversations with entrepreneurs and they're like, I want X result. I want this many leads.
Right.
And it's like, we can turn on leads for you anytime you want.
Right.
We can give you so many leads that it puts you out of business. That's not
right.
You don't need leads. What is the goal? And what I've learned is that people don't know what they're actually asking for, which goes back to those good questions, right?
Absolutely.
Would you mind sharing what you've seen as far as the evolution of the savvy entrepreneur and what they need to do? Like not step by step, but just a few basic steps that really get people on track to having something that is a legacy-based business.
Yes. One quick comment on the first thing you mentioned: the more that things change, the more they stay the same. I reference a band that I grew up listening to and loving called Rush, and there was a line in one of their songs where they use a little French and they say "plus ça change, plus c'est la même chose." Now, I'm not French, but that's essentially what that phrase means, and that's always stuck with me since I was a kid and I heard them sing that song. Now, I do believe that everything is cyclical.
Yeah.
Everything is cyclical. Look at history. History is cyclical. Everything happens that way. And yes, the technology changes and it seems like the landscape changes. But in essence, we're still human beings, and we still come back to the same weaknesses. We still come back to the same mindset. We still come back to the same way of being and showing up no matter what, right? We all have fear. We all have anger. We all have core emotions, right? Love and hate, whatever you want to focus on. Now, what I see and where I tend to point people that we work with is to focus on what I call the fewer better. We're in a place right now where we are freaking overwhelmed. There are a million ways to get to the same place right now. And it's a matter of stop trying to be and play with the Joneses out there and try and be and have everything that the Joneses have. What's your path? First off, your business will only grow to the degree you do, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mindset thing. So many a time, most people don't realize the reason their business hits this glass ceiling is because their mindset is here and it's stuck there, and it's always been stuck there. And it doesn't matter if they were running this business or that business, they'd still be stuck here, right? So when I talk about the fewer better, I talk about, and this comes back from playing sports when I was a kid, focusing on sprints, shorter sprints instead of marathons. And what I mean by that is many times as an entrepreneur, we get stuck and we get caught up into trying to perfect everything and to trying to lay out all of this groundwork and all of this foundation. And at the end of the day, are you traveling what we call your fastest path to cash? We all have one. And what's one for you, Chris, might not be the same for me.
That's
And the
right.
same for everyone else out there listening. So to always play follow the follower, which is what most people do out there,
I
right?
love it.
They're constantly chasing their own tail, and they're constantly looking, oh, well, this guy's doing that. I just need to do that. You know, Chris is running a great podcast. I just need to run a great podcast too. No, you don't. They may not be the right fit for you. What are the fewer better activities that you're meant to do that will get you traveling on your fastest path to cash? It's where you're not following the follower anymore, but you're actually traveling a path that's less traveled, but one that's more in alignment with who you are and who you're trying to be and how you want to show up for your audience, for your perfect, ideal target market. So it's about removing the crap, removing the clutter. I'll often say that some of the best money I help my clients make is the money I help them save. Stop them from spending so much money on junk, right? And taking something and running with it, whatever that something is. It's all about getting in action, which is what most people don't do, and they don't do well. You got a great event I hear coming up, right? Early
Yeah, we
April,
do.
right?
Yes, sir.
I would challenge your audience to take one idea
Right.
and implement that one idea before they even leave there. Implement
Brother,
one thing.
brother, I spent $50,000 with a coach about 9 months ago.
Right?
I had 3 conversations with him,
Right?
and that was the end of the coaching.
Right?
That's all it needed because
Right.
of who he is and how I'm willing to receive. And
Right?
there's something interesting sometimes about the more you play in, the more you get out.
Right? No doubt.
But what you were saying earlier, it reminded me of 10 Cup.
Oh yeah.
And there was a scene where his girlfriend walks into his bus and he has this thing dangling off his cap and he's got his wrist tied together and she's looking at him and she goes, I think his name was Roy or something, but she's like,
Right?
you look like a lost and desperate soul. And he says, he had the shanks really bad, Dean,
Right.
really,
Yeah.
really bad. And so he said, you are looking at a lost and desperate soul. And the truth is that there are unscrupulous business people out there that are happy to take advantage of people that are lost. And the reason I'm willing to highlight you is because you're willing to take the time to find out if they're even a good fit for you before you're willing to work for them. And
Absolutely.
those of us that play this entrepreneurial game for life, it's not something that we're just trying to make money at. We're making it a lifestyle.
That's
I mean, bro, we live in a glass house. Like I own a brick and mortar business. I own online businesses. I'm on podcasts. I step on stages. You can't run, but for so long before your poo-poo catches up with you.
That's right.
And I think part of us doing this particular podcast is you and I got on the phone and I was like, yep, he's one of us. He's one of these people that wants to actually do things in integrity because at the end of the day, I am so grateful to be an entrepreneur. I'm so grateful to live in a country that doesn't make it so hard to jump through hoops to just become one, to have the opportunity to fail or succeed, but to do it at my pace and my way. And you're actually helping people to become better because you don't take advantage of the lost and desperate souls. You, in fact, probably help them out too. But the bottom line is you have the experience now.
Yes.
To ask the question to find out if they're even committed to what they're talking about. Because the biggest thing I found, and I'm probably curious about your thoughts on this, there are a lot of people that say they want to get the result.
I know where you're going.
But when you tell them what's required to get it,
right.
They're not as interested in that part. Can you share some of your experiences around that?
Correct. I certainly can. And you just reminded me of a mutual friend of ours because we just got into a similar dialogue recently. And he said to me, if you would have told me when you were coaching me what I would have had to go through and what I would have had to have done, I probably wouldn't have done it. And I turned to him and I said, that's why I didn't tell you.
You talking about Keenan?
Yes, exactly. I said, that's why I didn't tell you, because you had greatness you were destined to step into, and far be it from me to step in the way of that. So my way of being is to recognize that. One of the gifts I feel I have is being able to look another person in the eyes and see something or not. I've always felt I was a good judge of character. I always felt that I could recognize greatness pretty easily. I could also recognize the crap pretty easily. That's enabled me to really be able to cherry pick who I work with and who I've worked with. And I always say that I'm grateful to my wife for this part of it, because in the beginning, when things were much leaner and even tougher, and she wasn't involved in the business. She was working at a law firm at the time, and it was trying to get her to buy into what I was trying to create. I left my beautiful 6-figure salary, corporate America job to come make zero. That didn't go over the greatest, but at the end of the day, I knew I was destined for something different. I knew I had a different path I needed to travel. So in being able to cherry pick, again, this goes right to what you were saying with, I'm very grateful. I'm very fortunate, man, to be able to be an entrepreneur, especially today. And I look at, and here's what I'm seeing. And I mentioned to you very briefly last time we talked, I believe I did anyway, about the mini mission I'm on to get in front of 1 million eyeballs. We need to help people. The devastation I saw happen to small business, especially here in New York, is mind-boggling and unacceptable. It's just freaking unacceptable. And when I look back at the gifts I've been given, the abilities I've been given, I say, you know what? I have to do something. Now, I can't do it alone, but that's why I talk to people like you.
Yep.
The more of us that bind together and step up out of integrity, and say, hey, you know what? No, this isn't working. This next generation of entrepreneurs is going to be on fire. You're going to get a couple of different kinds. One of them is going to be that new entrepreneur that sees all these new opportunities. I mean, just look what's happening with AI right now. Yep. All these new opportunities are popping up all over the place. The game has changed. The genie's out of the bottle. Sorry to tell you, folks. Now, that doesn't mean you start up an AI consultancy tomorrow. Make sure that you know what you're doing and you know how to do it out of integrity, where you're doing things because they make a difference for people's lives and not just because you can make a quick buck for the next 3 months until people catch on to it, right? However, it's like, again, looking at long-term, looking at what do we want to create, looking at what makes sense, right? That other crop of entrepreneurs are the ones that were just beat down, the ones that their businesses were closed. Now they're going to come back, the ones that do, and a lot of them will, because once you have an entrepreneur spirit in you, good luck trying to put it out. That fire doesn't go away. I could tell you that for certain. Try and go work for somebody now. You're almost unemployable at this point. So that hardened entrepreneur is going to come back with a different vengeance, a different passion, a different fire in their belly. That's the one I can't wait to get my hands on, because now they know what they know. They've been through some stuff. Now that they've been through that stuff, what are you willing to do this time that maybe next time or last time you weren't willing to do?
You're speaking my story, man. And I closed the doors in 2009. I had no idea that recession was going to do that.
Right.
And so in 2006, I'm like, oh, speed bumps. By 2009, I didn't have any money, and I closed it down.
Right.
I went and worked for a good fella, owned a top 50 remodeling company in America, moved 1,000 miles away to work with him. And within 2 years, he and I both knew that I was unhireable. Because if he said to go do something that didn't make any sense, I would look at him in the eyeballs and say, no, I'm not going to do that. It doesn't work. And he came to me one day and he shook my hand and he basically said, Chris, you're too much of an entrepreneur. And I was the number one salesman in his company by far,
right.
Highest margins and everything. And he goes, no, it's just not worth it. And I took a step back. I started a remodeling company. And in 2 years, I made every mistake that I made the first go round. I just made them one time and moved on quick because I was like, oh, I've already done that. And I changed. And we were at 7 figures in 2 years from scratch.
Right.
And it's because I came back seasoned.
Right.
And I said, no, I'm coming back to win this time. I'm not coming back to play games. I'm not coming back to be right. I'm not coming back to build the baddest ass team that exists. I'm here to stay lean. I'm here to stay mean. And I'm here to produce a result. And Dean, it was a game changer because that's what led me to meeting Tom.
Right.
And that's what led me to eventually meeting you.
Right.
But it's amazing when the mindset changes.
Yes.
Who starts showing up in your life, because those people, and that's the best use of the internet that I can find. You and I came up in a time where it was like, I mean, you're in New York. I was in Virginia. I'm in New Hampshire now, but I'm listening to Earl Nightingale on the phone, and he goes, start a mastermind. And I look to my left and I see about 100 miles of farm field. I look to my right and I see a highway. And I'm like, how the hell am I supposed to build a mastermind?
Right. With who?
There's no smart people around me that I can find.
Right.
And here we are. You're in New York. I'm in New Hampshire. Keenan's now in Texas. And I've got people all over the country that have experiences that I can just listen to.
Right.
And I don't have to make the mistake, and I can put a puzzle together in such a short amount of time. And I really want to encourage the people that are listening, get out of your own way. And you do not have to say yes to everybody. And no is a complete sentence. And find your tribe, because they are there. But here's the key. You can't find your tribe if you don't know who the hell you are.
Oh, yes.
And that's where a good mentor will come in.
Yes.
And say, hey, man, I know you hired me for some digital marketing and whatnot, but I can tell right now, you don't know what the hell you're selling and what you're doing for who. And that's the kind of person you are, because you have what we like to say in the business as wisdom.
Right. Exactly.
Wisdom doesn't come easy either, does it?
That's right. No, it doesn't. And I'm loving everything that you're saying there. And to dovetail on that and add a little piece, when we get our ego out of the way, clarity starts to show up. And when we get that clarity, you become unstoppable, right? Because you can see you're not full of crap anymore. I was full of crap too at one point. We all were. This is where, to say it nicely, the wisdom comes in, right? The maturity, the white in the beard,
right? The learning,
right? Exactly. I put in the hours on that stuff, but don't let me fool you there. I never stop learning. Ever. When we think we're done learning, it's over, man. You never stop learning, and you can learn something from anyone. I learned from my kids.
Yep.
You can learn from anyone. So when our ego relaxes a little bit and allows us permission to learn from others, boy, what starts opening up. Boy, what starts showing up. When our ego allows us to fail, to try things and fail. We don't, you hear people say all the time, oh yeah, just, look to the models of the successful people. Do what they're doing. And I'll say, look to the people who are failing. Look at their failures. You could save so much time, so much energy by learning what not to do. Right? As opposed to trying to do something that may have worked for that person. But again, it's not your unique marketing recipe or your unique recipe for success, right? You've got to be willing to find yours and work with the coaches, work with the mentors. And it may take several different coaches, several different mentors, right? I have things I specialize on. Chris has things he specializes on, right? As do other friends of ours have things that they specialize in, right? I've worked with numerous coaches and never ever coach with a coach who isn't being coached.
Yep.
I'll say that all the time, and I always say that, because then you're talking about a hypocrite, right? I'm not talking about a get-rich-quick scheme here or some sort of I just read a book, let me just regurgitate that book to you, and you pay me $20,000 for that.
Right.
You know what I mean? I have read over 1,000 books, though, and it does help, right? But it also led me to a realization that, you know what? It was clutter. I did not need to read 1,000 books. I would challenge you to read 5, one in a couple of different disciplines, and take massive action on those 5, as long as they're 5 great books. And you could probably ask Chris, and he could tell you which 5 books you might want to focus on. I would suggest definitely one from sales, definitely one that works on your mindset, right? And just do everything in those. Take massive action on those. And you'll find that you'll go like this very quickly, as opposed to, let me see how he says to do it. Now let me see how he says to do it. Now let me see how he says to do it. And then you end up doing none of them because you get overwhelmed.
You
Does that
know,
make sense?
there's so many, it makes perfect sense. There's so many people that go 100 miles wide and 3 feet deep.
Oh, I love that. That's great.
And
Yes.
you know, when I didn't know what I didn't know,
Yes.
it was a mental masturbation moment. But what it
Right.
did is it supplied me with some dopamine while I wasn't making any money. And I really realized I'd taken
Yeah.
off a chunk of the elephant that I couldn't swallow.
Right.
So
Right.
it was okay. But you're absolutely right. When you finally catch a hold of something that spurs interest, or you know that it's a need for what you have, it's so much better to go 3 feet wide and 100 feet deep in that thing,
Yes.
because then you start connecting with people that know more, ideas start flying. And to speak to what you were talking about with coaches, I'm going to share with everybody right now. I mean, I do have coaches, and when I coach my clients, it's amazing how similar what they're going through and the questions they're asking me can be answered by what I just
Right.
availed myself to with vulnerability to my coach. And I can give the perspective and the nuance. And so the way that I look at it is, I'm investing money over here. You're
Right.
investing money with me. I'm not only giving you the best of what I got, I'm giving you the best of what this person is doing to change and help me right now. You're getting
Right.
double.
Right.
And it gives
Absolutely.
me the ability to communicate authentically with people. And here's the best part, Dean. When I stopped claiming that I was the author of all the fucking information that came to me,
Right.
and just started saying, hey, this is where I find this resource, this is where I find this resource, what I
Right.
found is scarcity left me. And I started
Yes.
living in an abundant way of thinking.
Love it.
And that's where everything else
Love it.
started showing up. Friends, money, relationship at home, children, all the crap
Right.
came from me realizing that this 6 inches and this 2.5 pounds, or however much this thing weighs up here, it was holding me back, because until I had ever made $1 million, bro, I couldn't do it.
Right.
And then
Exactly.
all of a sudden, we crossed the $1 million mark. And the next year, it happened in 2.5 months.
Right. Right. Game change.
You can't, until you do it,
Right.
you can't comprehend that you do it. And here's the beauty of having people like you show up. We're just here. You're here saying, oh, you can do it. I promise you, I've helped hundreds of people do it,
Right.
but you have to be the right person.
Right.
And that's an
Exactly.
internal job. And those come back to those questions. And the best mentors, the best coaches, the best humans actually that I've ever met don't just run off at the mouth and tell you what to do. They pause to go, hey, man, who are you? What do you
Right.
want? Where
What
are
do you
you
want?
going?
Exactly.
And then they have that other thing. And by the way, I don't have the skill set to the level you do on this one aspect, but you can see inside of that person whether that seed of greatness is there or not, and you know how far and how hard you can push them.
Yeah. Exactly.
And that
Exactly.
that comes from probably not only a gift that God gave you,
Right.
but it probably also comes from being in the trenches for quite a while and just
Yeah.
seeing
I
the red flags, huh?
absolutely. Absolutely. This isn't a brag. This isn't a boast, but I've logged well over 10,000 one-on-one coaching hours already. And I'd say it's probably closer to 20,000.
Mhm.
So, not only did I get the benefit of being the person delivering coaching, but you learn from everybody you coach. Being able to interact with such great entrepreneurs at such different levels of their career, or at such different levels of their humanity, who they
Yeah.
were at that moment, how they were showing up, seeing a lot of them now. Sometimes I laugh with my wife and sit back, and it's like you feel like that proud papa sometimes, you know what I mean, where you can sit
Yes,
back
I
and
do.
say, I love this, and I love where this person's taken it. And my intention was to always, and I say this to all my clients, the learning and the gift doesn't stop here. I'm going to give you a gift, and I expect you to give it to someone else. If you hoard it, you won't get more gifts from me. But if you turn around and you share it and you help someone else, you made my day. That's what I'm asking of you. If you're open to that, then we could have a relationship. If you're not open to that, we can't. I'm sorry. You know, life is too short.
Yeah.
And, as I had mentioned, I had my kids later in life, so my kids are still teenagers. And, that's where my heart is. So if I'm going to allow anybody to pull my heart away and my head away from that, you better be bringing something, and you better be right. You better be the right person, the right fit. And again, I'm not saying that because I'm some sort of jackass. I'm saying it because, you know what? I value my time. I value myself. I value my children. I value my wife. I value the life we've created. I'm grateful for every moment of that. And I don't give it up too easily.
I know the feeling.
Right?
I was sitting in the hot tub with Robin. I think it was 3 days ago. And, we're 49.
Right.
And I said, Robin, and I'm not being, and she's reading a book right now that basically is suggesting that we're pre-programmed to age so we can deprogram ourselves. And I agree with all that.
Right.
I'm
Right.
huge into the mindset.
Mm-hmm.
But I was being practical with her. And I said, sweetheart, in about 25 years, we won't be able to physically do what we're doing right now unless major changes occur. And I'm not saying that
Right.
they won't, but
Right.
I'm just being practical, right?
Right.
We've got 25 years, hon. 20 really
Yeah,
before it
exactly.
starts to kind of set in. So just think about that. And so, we're 49. Then I think about 39, and I started having people pass away at about 35, like really
Right.
important people in my
Right.
life.
Right.
And I had it all happen in 1 year, and that really, I've been thinking about death ever since, but it's really starting to hit home. Like, we don't have as much time, and what is my life
Right.
really worth? And I'm on board with you. Like, dude, spending time with the people that I love the most,
Right.
it's precious because it could be gone
Absolutely.
tomorrow. And I challenge the people that are listening to this. Maybe you're in your early 30s. Maybe you're just starting out. I'm going to tell you, it goes quick. And if you're really building a business, it gets sucked out of you quick. Like, you
Yeah.
look up and it's like 5 years later and you're like, I don't think I've taken a vacation yet. And it's, well, that's why we got to talk, bro. But
Right.
it will happen. And we have to become intentional, exceptionally intentional, because the better you get, the more people start yanking on your cord and asking for that help. And we
Yes.
have to know who we can and who we can't. Dean,
Sure.
what are some of the initiatives that you're working on right now? I'm going to close this thing down here in a couple minutes, give people their ride back to work.
You bet. Well, the big one that I'm working on right now is the eyeballs, the million eyeballs in 2023. That's not about me making money. That's not a money grab for me right now. That is a give back. That is a try and move the needle as much as I can. And as many people as I can band together with me to do that all over the place, we're going to do that. Let's empower people at this point in time, because people need to be lifted up right now, just a
Yeah.
little bit. They need to know somebody cares.
Yeah.
Somebody gives a, you know what. So that's the big initiative that I'm focused on at this point in time. So that's why you're seeing me on lots of podcasts, see me all over the place at this point in time, becoming a little bit more omnipresent. The last couple of years, I kind of flew under the radar. As I saw the public schools fail, I yanked my kids out. I've been homeschooling. I've been a homeschool dad. And that's not, that doesn't mean I wasn't working my jobs, my businesses. I was still doing that too. But I saw the need and the desire to give my kids more, because I didn't like where things were going. And here in New York, I don't know about New Hampshire or any other state around the country as much as I do here. The public school, it's unacceptable what they're doing to our children right now. So that's really the gist of what's happening in my life for 2023. That's my calling.
Where can people come to support you? Where can people come to learn more about you? How can they get in touch with you if they want to chat with you a little bit?
Sure. Well, the easiest place, I have two different main websites. One is the Dean Mercado company. So it's deanmercado.com, just my first name, last name.com. From there, that will point you everywhere. It'll show you where I am. So I play heavily on LinkedIn. I play a bit on YouTube, not much. I've been on YouTube for years, but I haven't played there much. So those are probably your best place to find me, is deanmercado.com. Onlinemarketingmuscle.com is the secondary place where you could find and learn a little bit about who I am, what I do, how I go about doing it. Yeah, and I'm trying to make a difference here in New York in particular. So if anybody here is in New York, make sure you reach out to me. Make sure you connect with me because we need to make some difference here in our home state. You know, it's like heal yourself and then you can help heal others, right? We're in pain here in New York. So
One of my buddies was just running for town council, and he didn't win. The incumbent won, and they have deep family ties into it. But
right.
he was saying a very similar thing. He's on Long Island, and he was just like, Chris, we need people that are going to make results happen, not people that keep talking about
Right.
cronyism and all the other stuff.
Right.
And he said, unfortunately, those ties run deep and it didn't happen. And, but I just encouraged him to keep going because I think it's building. I think
Yes,
it's truly
it
building.
is.
And I'll make sure, not only that he hears this podcast, but I'll make sure that he and a few other people in Long Island connect with you, brother, because I really appreciate what you're doing. We're both in a stage now where, yeah, we want to keep making money, everybody. And
Sure.
I'm not ashamed of it on any level, but we're in a stage now where we realize that it's incumbent upon us to start giving back.
Correct.
Somebody has
Absolutely.
to pass this thing along, man.
Absolutely.
Or
Absolutely.
it's
We can't allow this to happen. We can't allow this kind of wisdom to die with us.
yep.
I'm seeing plenty of people. Maya, today is my 55th, man. So,
Happy
holy
birthday.
crap, dude. The years just, where did the last 10, 20 go?
Yep.
You know what I mean? It feels like
Yep.
it just went by in a blur and a blink. And I'm looking at it and I'm like, no, 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 no. I still got some fire in me. Let's get out there. Let's make some stuff happen. So if you're in New York, you will see me on local stages. You will see me around. Look me up, find me, connect with me if you're out here and you're out and about. Then if wherever we're meant to work together in any capacity with anybody who hears this, we'll know. You'll never get a hard sale pressure out of me, man, ever, because we'll look at each other and we'll hear each other and we'll know and we'll
It's
figure
funny
it
how
out.
it works. It's
Yeah,
funny how that works
it
out.
is, and it will. And I own a marketing agency.
Right.
And I'm telling you that. You know
Right.
what I mean? So I could get you leads. But you know what? At the end of the day, you want leads, you want people that you want to work with. You want to be around people that make sense.
You got that right, man. Well, we'll make sure that we post up your website links when this comes out. Brother, I look forward to having a conversation with you again.
Likewise.
And
Absolutely.
well, thank you so much for taking time to be on the
You
show.
bet. Thank you.
All right, everybody. We'll see you in the trenches. Take care.
I came from the mud. There's dirt on my hands. Strong like a tree. There's roots where I stand.
Hey, friend, if you enjoyed listening to this podcast, please leave a review and subscribe to catch future casts. If you really enjoyed this episode, make sure you share it so others can benefit from it as well. I'll see you in the trenches.
Try to catch me howling at the moon.